These are the most bizarre real cases, still unsolved and shrouded in mystery as of 2025. Henry McCabe, a 31-year-old auditor from Mounds View, Minnesota, mysteriously disappeared on September 7, 2015. Originally from Liberia, McCabe was described as a family man with no history of erratic behavior or vanishing without explanation. What makes this case so haunting is not just the unanswered questions, but the disturbing voicemail he left. On the evening of September 6, 2015, Henry attended a Labor Day weekend party in Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. Friends reported that he became heavily intoxicated. To prevent him from further drinking, his friend William Kennedy took his wallet, which also contained his ID and cash. This decision would later complicate the timeline and questions surrounding his disappearance. Early on September 7th, Kennedy claimed he dropped Henry off at a gas station in Fridley, Minnesota, around 2 a.m. However, no CCTV footage has ever confirmed this statement, nor have any witnesses corroborated it. At approximately 2:23 a.m., Henry's wife, Corrine, who was out of state at the time, received a voicemail from his phone. The audio is as chilling as it is mysterious. Henry's groans and screams can be heard, along with him pleading, "Stop it," and saying, "I'm being shot." Adding to the terror are disturbing growls and high-pitched sounds, which remain unexplained. Search efforts began soon after Henry was reported missing. His family and law enforcement scoured the area near the gas station, where Kennedy claimed to have left him. Despite their efforts, no clues or evidence were found. Days turned into weeks, and Henry's case seemed to grow colder by the day. On November 2, 2015, a kayaker discovered Henry's body in Rush Lake, located in New Brighton, Minnesota, roughly 6 miles from the gas station. The discovery only deepened the mystery. His body showed no visible signs of trauma or struggle, and the medical examiner ruled the cause of death as drowning. Toxicology reports revealed alcohol in his system, consistent with reports of his intoxication that night. However, the lack of physical injuries and the distance between his last known location and Rush Lake raised troubling questions. What really happened to Henry McCabe? The voicemail, one of the most perplexing elements of the case, has been analysed and debated extensively. Some experts suggest the strange sounds could have been environmental noises distorted by Henry's impaired state. Others speculate he may have encountered a wild animal, though no physical evidence supports this. The growls and screeches remain open to interpretation, fueling theories ranging from accidental death to supernatural encounters. Investigators have reached several conclusions regarding the case. The official cause of death is listed as accidental drowning, with alcohol intoxication likely impairing Henry's judgment and coordination. However, inconsistencies in William Kennedy's account, particularly the absence of surveillance footage or witnesses to verify the gas station drop-off, have raised significant doubts. Was Henry ever truly dropped off at the gas station, or could his last known location have been elsewhere? Theories surrounding Henry's death span a wide range. One possibility is that he accidentally wandered into the lake while disoriented by alcohol. Yet, this explanation doesn't account for how he managed to travel 6 miles on foot in the middle of the night. Another theory posits that Henry may have taken his own life, though his family strongly disputes this, citing his lack of prior struggles with depression or suicidal tendencies. The chilling voicemail Henry left further complicates the case, fueling suspicions of foul play. Some believe he may have been coerced or forced into the lake by an unknown individual, but the absence of injuries or evidence of a struggle leaves this theory speculative at best. Among the more unconventional ideas is the notion of a cryptid or supernatural encounter. The growls and screeches on the voicemail have sparked online discussions, with some suggesting Henry may have encountered an animal or an otherworldly entity. While fascinating, these theories lack any concrete evidence and are largely dismissed by experts. Henry's case leaves us with several unresolved questions. What caused the eerie sounds on the voicemail? How did his body end up in Rush Lake, so far from where he was reportedly last seen? Why has no evidence surfaced to verify Kennedy's account? Was Henry alone in his final moments, or was someone else involved? These unanswered questions continue to haunt his family and intrigue those who examine the case. It's been years since Henry's body was discovered, but the case still leaves a heavy feeling. The lake where he was found, quiet and unassuming, now carries the weight of an unsolved tragedy. As for his voicemail, it's a haunting reminder of how little we sometimes know about the last moments of a person's life. Theories abound, but no one has been able to connect all the dots. Derek Luking, the Smoky Mountains. The case of Derek Luking, a 24-year-old whose disappearance in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park leaves us with more questions than answers. On March 17th, 2012, Derek, a recent graduate with a promising future, checked out of the Microtel Inn and Suites in Cherokee, North Carolina, early that morning. To anyone watching, it seemed like an ordinary start to the day. However, later that same day, his car was found abandoned near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Inside the vehicle, searchers discovered survival gear, a map of the park, and a note. The note said, "I've gone to walk away from it all." What makes this case so eerie is the deliberate tone of that last sentence. Don't try to follow me. The Great Smoky Mountains are vast, spanning over 500,000 acres of dense forests and rugged terrain. It's a place where someone could easily vanish without a trace. Derek's abandoned car, the gear he had carefully gathered, and the ominous note left behind turned this case into a chilling mystery, opening the door to speculation and unanswered questions. Search efforts began almost immediately. Helicopters hovered over the canopy, bloodhounds tracked scents through the underbrush, and search parties combed the trails. Despite these efforts, there was no sign of Derek or the survival equipment he'd recently purchased. Why would someone go to the trouble of buying such items, including a survival book, a knife, and a tarp, only to leave them behind in the car? It's a question that has puzzled investigators and armchair detectives alike. Derek's note, particularly the phrase, "Don't try to follow me," added another layer of complexity. Was it a plea for solitude, a warning, or something else entirely? His family described him as thoughtful and kind, but they also noted recent signs of stress and dissatisfaction in his life. He'd mentioned to friends a desire to escape, to break free from the routines and pressures of modern life. Some believe the note points to a deliberate decision to disappear, whether to escape the pressures of life or for reasons only Derek understood. Interestingly, the survival gear in his car was unused. This has led to theories suggesting Derek may have had a change of heart or a different plan altogether. Did he intend to stage his disappearance, only to meet an unexpected fate? Theories surrounding Derek's case range from the plausible to the bizarre. Some suggest he may have succumbed to an accident or exposure, his body concealed by the park's challenging terrain. Others theorize that he intentionally vanished, seeking to start anew or even to end his life in isolation. The lack of physical evidence, no gear, no tracks, no personal items, has fueled more speculative ideas. Could Derek have encountered something sinister? Or could his case be connected to the disturbing number of unsolved disappearances reported in national parks across the United States? Psychologically, Derek's case invites reflection on the human urge to escape. National parks represent freedom and renewal, but they also carry an inherent isolation. For some, That isolation is liberating. For others, it can become overwhelming. Derek's actions and his notes suggest a deliberate plan, yet the unresolved nature of his disappearance leaves his intent open to interpretation. Did he seek solitude as a form of healing, only to find himself lost in more ways than one? Or was his note a final goodbye, his choice to walk away not just symbolic but permanent? What's unsettling is the lack of closure. National parks are known for their beauty, but they also carry an air of mystery. There have been numerous reports of unexplained vanishings in these vast, untamed areas, leading some to speculate about patterns or phenomena beyond our understanding. Derek's case fits into this narrative, raising questions about how someone can vanish so completely, despite extensive search efforts and modern technology. The emotional toll on Derek's family cannot be overstated. They've expressed frustration at the lack of answers, but remain hopeful for some kind of resolution. In interviews, they've described Derek as someone who loved life, but was seeking something he couldn't seem to find. His disappearance leaves behind a trail of confusion and heartbreak, a reminder of the fragility of human connection. It's been over a decade, and the Great Smoky Mountains have still kept Derek's secrets. Theories abound, but the truth remains elusive. As we turn our attention to the next case, Derek's story lingers, reminding us of the mysteries hidden in the world's most beautiful and remote places. The Stairway to Heaven. The case of Dalen Mokapua, an 18-year-old high school student from Hawaii Island, is as mystifying as it is heartbreaking. On February 27, 2015, Pua set out to hike the Haiku Stairs on Oahu, Hawaii, also known as the Stairway to Heaven. Despite knowing the trail was officially closed, Pua still decided to pursue the trail as an adventurous outing, which soon turned into a chilling mystery when Pua vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a series of eerie photographs and unanswered questions. Pua had been staying with his grandmother on Oahu at the time. That morning, he told her about his plan to hike the Haiku Stairs, a notoriously steep and dangerous trail offering breathtaking views. She warned him of the risks and urged him not to go, but he was determined. During the hike, Pua sent several photos to his family, documenting his progress. One of these photos later became a focal point of the case. It appeared to show an unidentified figure in the background, dubbed by some as the Shadow Man. When Pua failed to return home that evening, his grandmother reported him missing. The following days saw a massive search effort involving volunteer rescue teams and the Honolulu Fire Department. Rescuers scoured the area, rappelled down cliffs, and followed up on reports of cries for help heard by other hikers. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no trace of Pua was ever found. The dense vegetation and treacherous terrain of the Haiku Stairs area posed significant challenges, and as days turned into weeks, the search was called off without any leads. The haunting photographs sent by Pua added a layer of intrigue to the case. Family members closely examined the images he had taken and noticed the mysterious figure in one of them. They appealed to the public for help in identifying this individual, hoping he might provide information about Pua's disappearance. However, no one came forward, and the identity of the Shadow Man remains unknown. Professionals involved in the search offered some conclusions, though none provided definitive answers. The Honolulu Police Department found no evidence of foul play and classified the case as a missing person. The search and rescue teams noted the area's challenging environment, which could easily conceal a person or their belongings. But the lack of physical evidence, such as Pua's phone, clothing, or any remains, left even seasoned investigators baffled. Theories about what happened to Pua vary widely. One of the most straightforward explanations is that he may have accidentally fallen from the trail. The Haiku Stairs are known for their steep inclines and precarious footing, and even experienced hikers can lose their balance. If Pua fell, his body could have ended up in an area too difficult to access or locate. Another theory suggests that he became disoriented or injured and succumbed to exposure in the harsh environment. A more unsettling theory revolves around the unidentified figure in the photograph. Some speculate that Pua encountered someone on the trail who may have been involved in his disappearance. The Shadow Man theory has fueled much online discussion, with some suggesting sinister motives, though there is no evidence to support this. Others have even proposed supernatural explanations, drawing on Hawaiian folklore about spirits or guardians of sacred places. While these ideas captivate the imagination, they remain speculative. One of the most perplexing aspects of the case is the lack of physical evidence. Despite extensive searches and reports of hikers hearing screams around the time of Pua's disappearance, not a single item belonging to him was recovered. This absence raises questions about the effectiveness of the search or whether Pua might have ended up far from the presumed area. Dalen Moke Pua's disappearance has left his family and the community grappling with unresolved questions. Who was the figure in the photograph? Why was no evidence found despite such extensive efforts? What really happened on that fateful hike? These questions linger, keeping the case alive in public memory. Today, the haiku stairs remain closed to the public, their allure undiminished despite the risks. For Pua's family, the trail symbolizes both his adventurous spirit and the devastating mystery that took him away. As the years pass, the hope for answers persists, even as the lush, untamed beauty of Oahu seems to guard its secrets as steadfastly as ever. The rental of Robert Cooper. In the quiet suburb of Aurora, Colorado, a brutal and calculated crime left investigators with far more questions than answers. On May 22, 2004, Okie Albert Al Kite Jr., a 53-year-old man known for his kind and trusting nature, was murdered in a way that still haunts anyone familiar with the case. Despite countless hours of investigation, the person responsible for this horrifying act has never been caught. The story of Al Kite is a chilling reminder of how a seemingly ordinary life can take a dark and mysterious turn, leaving a trail of clues that seem to lead nowhere. Al lived a quiet, structured life in a townhouse he owned. At the time of his death, he was renting out a room in his home. Earlier in 2004, he met a man who introduced himself as Robert Cooper. Cooper claimed to be from the East Coast, spoke with what some described as an Eastern European accent, and walked with a noticeable limp, supported by a cane. From the outset, Cooper's details didn't quite add up. The identification he provided turned out to be fake, and any attempts to trace his background led investigators to dead ends. Yet, Al, a generous and trusting man, didn't seem to suspect anything was amiss. On May 22, 2004, neighbors reported seeing Al and Cooper together, entering Al's townhouse. It would be the last time Al Kite was seen alive. The following morning, May 23rd, someone attempted to withdraw money from an ATM using Al's debit card. Surveillance footage showed a man in a ski mask driving Al's pickup truck. That truck would later be found abandoned near his home. By May 24th, Al's co-workers, growing worried after he didn't show up for work, contacted the authorities. What they discovered in the basement of his home shocked even seasoned investigators. Al's body was found bound and tortured before he was ultimately to death. The brutality of the crime suggested the killer had spent hours inflicting pain, possibly trying to extract information or for reasons far darker. Despite the violent scene, the crime appeared meticulously planned. The suspect had thoroughly cleaned areas of the home, removed evidence, and left behind no forensic traces of himself. Further details about the planning revealed an even more unsettling picture. Robert Cooper had purchased a burner phone from a 7-Eleven store, but didn't use it until 30 days after buying it. This chilling move indicated a precise knowledge of surveillance practices, as many stores delete CCTV footage after 30 days. This level of foresight showcased the suspect's intelligence and terrifying attention to detail. Every action seemed calculated to leave no trace. painting the picture of a sadistic and highly methodical individual. The investigation quickly focused on Robert Cooper. His use of a false identity, combined with the tactical nature of the crime, suggested a high level of sophistication. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act, but a crime that was planned down to the smallest detail. Why Al specifically? Was it because he lived alone, making him an easy target, or was there a more personal reason behind the choice? Some believed the killer's precision pointed to him being a professional hitman, hired for reasons that remain unclear. Others wondered if this was the work of a serial offender. There were unsettling similarities between Al's murder and other unsolved cases, like the 1999 killing of Lee Scott Hall and the 2001 murder of real estate agent Mike Emmert. These cases, like Al's, involved victims bound and stabbed in their own homes. Yet, unlike a professional hit or robbery, the excessive violence inflicted on Al felt deeply personal, leading some to speculate about the killer's psychological state. Theories ranged from revenge to sadistic impulses, but no solid motive has ever been established. Even with the FBI's involvement and the release of a detailed profile describing the suspect as a white male in his 30s or 40s, standing about 5'10" with brown or black hair, Robert Cooper vanished as completely as he had appeared. Unresolved questions continue to plague this case. Who was Robert Cooper, and what was his true identity? Why was Al Kite targeted, and was this murder connected to other unsolved cases? How could someone so meticulous leave behind no tangible trail? Perhaps the most unsettling thought of all. Was this killer a stranger passing through, or was he someone hiding in plain sight, moving on to new victims without a trace? Over 2 decades later, the answers remain maddeningly out of reach. For those who knew Al, the grief never truly faded, and for investigators, the mystery of what happened in that townhouse in 2004 is a haunting reminder of how much darkness can linger beneath the surface of an ordinary life. And perhaps even more chilling is the realization that this meticulous and intelligent killer could still be out there, living among us, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The vanishing of Brian Schaffer. Brian Schaffer was a young man with a bright future ahead of him. At 27 years old, he was a second-year medical student at Ohio State University, known for his charisma, ambition, and a sense of humor that endeared him to those who knew him. But on the night of April 1st, 2006, Brian vanished without a trace, leaving behind one of the most confounding mysteries of modern times. His disappearance, baffling and heartbreaking, remains unsolved to this day. In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Brian's life was a blend of joy and sorrow. He was in a serious relationship with Alexis Wagner, a fellow medical student, and the couple had planned a romantic spring break trip to Miami. Some speculated that Brian intended to propose during their vacation. However, his happiness was tempered by grief. In March 2006, his mother, Renee, passed away after battling a rare form of bone cancer. Friends and family noted that while Brian was resilient, the loss of his mother weighed heavily on him. The night of March 31st, 2006, began as a celebration. Brian had dinner with his father, Randy, to mark the start of spring break. Though he appeared fatigued from recent exams, Brian decided to go out with his friend, William Clint Florence, for a night on the town. The two began their evening at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar in Columbus's South Campus Gateway district, before moving on to other nearby bars. They later met up with another friend, Meredith Reed, who gave them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloona around 1:15 a.m. Surveillance footage captured Brian outside the bar at approximately 1:55 a.m., chatting briefly with two women. He then re-entered the bar, and this was the last confirmed sighting of him. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith searched for Brian but couldn't find him. Assuming he had gone home on his own, they left. However, when Brian failed to show up for his flight to Miami with Alexis 2 days later, alarm bells began to ring. His family promptly filed a missing person report with the Columbus Police Department. The investigation into Brian's disappearance was extensive but frustratingly fruitless. Authorities reviewed hours of surveillance footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloona and surrounding areas. There was only one entrance to which Brian was seen entering the bar, yet was never seen leaving the bar. How could he have vanished from a location monitored by cameras at every exit? Theories began to emerge, each more puzzling than the last. Some speculated that Brian met with an accident after leaving the bar unnoticed. At the time, construction was underway nearby, and it was proposed that he might have fallen into a site or the nearby Olentangy River. Yet extensive searches of the area yielded no evidence to support this theory. Others considered the possibility that Brian chose to disappear voluntarily. The loss of his mother and the pressures of medical school could have driven him to start anew. However, this theory seemed unlikely, as Brian left behind his car, wallet, and other personal belongings. He also showed no prior indications of wanting to abandon his life. Foul play remains a troubling possibility. Some theorists suggest that Brian was abducted or met with harm after leaving the bar. Yet, the lack of witnesses or evidence has made this avenue difficult to investigate. A more controversial idea links Brian's case to the smiley face killer theory, which posits that a network of serial killers targets young men across the United States. However, there is no concrete evidence connecting Brian's disappearance to this theory. One aspect of the case that has drawn scrutiny is the behavior of Brian's friend, Clint Florence. While Meredith Reed cooperated fully with investigators, Clint refused to take a polygraph test. His reluctance raised eyebrows, leading some to question whether he might know more than he's revealed. However, no evidence has ever implicated Clint in Brian's disappearance. Over the years, the mystery of Brian Schaffer's disappearance has continued to captivate the public. Online forums, podcasts, and true crime shows have kept the case in the spotlight. But no new leads have emerged. His father, Randy, tragically passed away in 2008 after being struck by a falling tree during a storm, taking with him the hope of finding closure for his son's case. Brian's younger brother, Derek, remains one of the few family members still seeking answers. What makes this case so haunting is the sheer impossibility of it. How does a man simply vanish from a crowded bar without leaving a trace? The questions are endless. Did Brian somehow evade the cameras and leave unnoticed? If so, where did he go and what happened next? Was he the victim of a random crime or a targeted act? And why, after all these years, has no trace of him ever been found? As of today, Brian Schaffer remains missing, his fate unknown. His case is a chilling reminder of how even the most ordinary night can spiral into unexplainable tragedy. For those who loved him, the search for answers continues, and for the rest of us, his story serves as a stark warning of how fragile and mysterious life can be. Morgenheimer. In the breathtaking yet treacherous terrain of the Grand Canyon, the disappearance of Morgenheimer in 2015 remains one of the most mystifying cases in recent history. On June 2, 2015, the 22-year-old river guide vanished without a trace during a rafting trip. Despite exhaustive search efforts and widespread speculation, no clues have ever emerged, leaving this case as one of the Grand Canyon's most perplexing mysteries. Morgan was no novice to the wilderness. An experienced outdoorsman and guide for the commercial rafting company Tour West, he had spent countless hours navigating the Colorado River. At the time of his disappearance, Morgan was 6 days into an 8-day rafting expedition with a group of clients. His colourful attire, including a bright yellow life jacket and blue plaid shirt, was a hallmark of his personality and should have made him easy to spot in the rugged terrain. On the afternoon of June 2nd, Morgan was last seen near River Mile 213, close to Pumpkin Springs. He reportedly informed the lead guide that he was taking a break. When the lead guide turned around from speaking with a client, Morgan was nowhere to be found. Normally, you wouldn't think twice if someone briefly disappeared from your view, especially when they're an experienced guide. But as time passed, concerns began to escalate. Initially, it seemed inconceivable that someone so experienced and well-equipped could simply vanish. When Morgan failed to appear for dinner, concern turned to alarm, and he was reported missing at 7:26 p.m. The National Park Service, NPS, launched an extensive search and rescue operation. Teams scoured the area between river miles 211 and 225, deploying ground crews, river patrols, and aerial surveillance. The operation faced immense challenges, including difficult terrain, dense vegetation, and the Colorado River's powerful currents. Yet, despite these efforts, not a single trace of Morgan was discovered. His life jacket, water bottle, or any personal belongings, items that should have been recoverable, were never found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. This lack of physical evidence is one of the most baffling aspects of the case. Even in accidental drownings, it is common for some items to surface eventually. Morgan's bright clothing and life jacket, designed to be highly visible, should have made him easier to locate. The complete absence of clues has led to widespread speculation and several theories about what might have happened. One prevailing theory is that Morgan accidentally fell into the river and drowned. The Colorado River is known for its treacherous currents and cold waters, which can incapacitate even the strongest swimmers. However, Morgan was wearing a personal flotation device, which should have kept him buoyant. Furthermore, experienced search teams found no evidence to suggest that his body was carried downstream. Another theory posits that Morgan chose to disappear intentionally. Some speculate that he might have walked away from the group and used the dense vegetation and rugged terrain to evade detection. However, this theory seems unlikely given the lack of motive and the logistical challenges of surviving in such an inhospitable environment without preparation. There are so many unanswered questions that's puzzling to everyone. The Grand Canyon sees thousands of visitors annually, and while it is remote, the presence of other individuals cannot be ruled out. However, there were no reports of suspicious activity or individuals in the area at the time, and no evidence has emerged to support this theory. Adding to the unsettling nature of Morgan's disappearance is the meticulous planning it would have required if he did intend to vanish. For instance, the rafting trip's remoteness, coupled with his bright clothing and lack of recoverable items, suggests an eerie level of precision and intent, or a tragic accident so inexplicable it defies logic. The most chilling possibility remains. Morgan might have succumbed to an accident, but the circumstances of his disappearance were so unique and precise that no trace was ever left behind. Unanswered questions continue to haunt those who knew Morgan and those fascinated by his case. How could someone so experienced and prepared vanish without a single clue? Why was not even a water bottle or a piece of clothing found? Did anyone notice unusual activity in the area? Or was this disappearance truly the work of nature's unforgiving elements? As of now, Morgan Elias Heimer remains missing, and his case is classified as unsolved. This case serves as a sobering reminder of the Mother Nature's power and mystery. The Grand Canyon is a place where survival often depends on experience, caution, and sometimes sheer luck. For Morgan, an experienced survivalist in bright, eye-catching clothing, to completely disappear without a trace is not just unusual, it's terrifying. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is that the canyon's vast, rugged beauty may be hiding secrets it will never reveal. Amber Tuckerow. The 20-year-old mother from the Mikisew Cree First Nation vanished on August 18, 2010 near Edmonton, Alberta. Amber was a devoted mother to her 14-month-old son. In August 2010, she travelled from Fort McMurray to Edmonton with her son and a friend for a short getaway. The trio stayed at a motel in Nisku, a small community south of Edmonton. On August 18th, Amber informed her friend that she was catching a ride into the city. She was last seen getting into a vehicle with an unidentified man. During the ride, Amber's concern became evident when she made a phone call, during which the male driver's voice was recorded.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north of Beaumont. Yo, where are we going?
Just
No, this is a... Are you f***ing kidding me? You better not be taking me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we?
we're going.
No, we're not.
Yes.
Then where the f- these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street?
50th Street.
East, right? Over town.
Bravo.
Bravo.
In the unsettling audio, Amber is heard questioning the driver, saying, "You'd better not be taking me anywhere I don't want to go." This was the last time anyone heard from her. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, failed to treat Amber's disappearance with the urgency it warranted. Initially, her case was dismissed as non-suspicious, and she was removed from the missing persons list, with authorities suggesting she might have been out partying. These assumptions not only delayed critical investigative efforts, but also underscored a broader pattern of negligence often seen in cases involving missing Indigenous women. It wasn't until September 1st, 2012, when horseback riders discovered Amber's remains in a wooded area in Leduc County, just 17 kilometers from where she was last seen, that the RCMP began to take the case seriously. In 2012, the RCMP released a 1-minute segment of the phone call Amber made during her final moments. The recording, capturing the man's voice and Amber's evident discomfort, remains one of the most haunting aspects of the case. Despite widespread public dissemination of the audio and pleas for information, the man's identity has never been determined. The recording is a chilling reminder of the danger Amber faced and serves as a key piece of evidence in the ongoing investigation. Theories about Amber's murder have ranged from the actions of a lone assailant to the possibility of a serial offender targeting Indigenous women in the region. Leduc County, where Amber's remains were found, has been the site of several other unsolved cases involving women's deaths and disappearances. This has fueled speculation that a predator or network of offenders may be operating in the area. However, no conclusive links have been established. The handling of Amber's case is emblematic of the systemic issues that plague investigations involving missing and murdered Indigenous women. The initial dismissal of her disappearance, the delays in action, and the lack of accountability have rightly drawn outrage from her family and advocates. In 2014, the RCMP issued an apology to Amber's family, acknowledging their mishandling of the case. However, for Amber's loved ones, words are not enough. Her brother, Paul Tuccaro, has been a vocal advocate, tirelessly working to keep Amber's case in the public eye and demanding justice. Unanswered questions continue to loom large. Who was the man in the recording? Why did he target Amber? And what were his motives? How did the investigation fail so profoundly in its early stages? The absence of clear answers is a source of anguish for Amber's family and a damning indictment of systemic failures in addressing violence against Indigenous women. As of now, Amber Tuccaro's murder remains unsolved. The audio recording, a haunting testament to her final moments, serves as both a key piece of evidence and a chilling reminder of the crime's brutality. For her family and for the broader movement for justice, the fight continues. Amber's legacy is a call to action, demanding that no more lives be lost to violence and neglect. The questions surrounding her case, and the failures of those who were supposed to protect her, remain a stain on the Canadian justice system, a stark reminder of the work still needed to bring about change. Jack Wheeler. In the final days of December 2010, a series of strange and disjointed events unraveled in Wilmington, Delaware, like puzzle pieces scattered without a frame. At the center was Jack Wheeler, a man of remarkable stature and accomplishment, a Vietnam veteran, White House aide, and a driving force behind the creation of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Known for his dedication to service and his sharp intellect, Wheeler's life and legacy seemed untouchable until his shocking and untimely death painted a chilling mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Born on December 14, 1944, in Laredo, Texas, John Parsons, Jack Wheeler III, was a man of profound influence. His career spanned decades and included prestigious roles at the Pentagon and within several presidential administrations. He was also the CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving and a consultant for the MITRE Corporation, where he worked on cybersecurity. A man of principle and action, Wheeler's life embodied service to his country and its people. The events leading up to his death were as confounding as the discovery of his body. On December 28, 2010, reports surfaced of a man resembling Wheeler throwing smoke bombs into a neighbor's house under construction in Newcastle, Delaware. Wheeler had been vocal in his opposition to the project, citing its obstruction of his view of the Delaware River, and had filed lawsuits in protest. This erratic behavior marked the beginning of a downward spiral that would culminate in tragedy. The following day, December 29th, Wheeler was seen in Wilmington, appearing disoriented and wearing only one shoe. He spoke to a parking garage attendant, claiming his briefcase had been stolen and seeming confused about the location of his car. Later, he visited a pharmacy in Newcastle, asking for a ride back to Wilmington. Witnesses described him as distressed, a stark contrast to the composed and authoritative figure many knew him to be. On December 30th, Wheeler's erratic movements continued. He was spotted in various locations across Wilmington, including a coffee shop and a law office. Surveillance footage captured him wandering downtown, disheveled and seemingly lost. By that evening, Wheeler vanished without a trace, his whereabouts unknown until the chilling discovery the next day. On December 31st, 2010, Wheeler's body was found at the Cherry Island landfill in Wilmington. A sanitation worker noticed his remains falling out of a garbage truck during its routine dump. Investigators determined that the truck had collected waste from a commercial dumpster in Newark, Delaware earlier that day. The Delaware Medical Examiner's Office ruled his death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma, yet despite the ruling, the circumstances surrounding his death raised more questions than answers. The investigation into Wheeler's murder has been plagued by ambiguity. Authorities reviewed surveillance footage and interviewed witnesses, but no suspects were identified. The absence of clear evidence or a definitive motive left the case mired in speculation. Several theories have emerged over the years, each as unsettling as the next. One theory suggests Wheeler fell victim to a random robbery that escalated to violence. However, the lack of supporting evidence, no stolen items, no signs of struggle, renders this explanation tenuous. Another posits that his death was the result of a professional hit, potentially linked to his extensive government work or knowledge of sensitive information. Yet, this theory remains purely speculative, with no concrete leads to back it up. A third possibility ties his murder to the smoke bomb incident and his opposition to the neighboring construction project. Could his vocal dissent have escalated into a fatal altercation? While intriguing, this theory lacks substantive evidence. Finally, some suggest Wheeler's erratic behavior in the days before his death points to a mental health crisis. If so, it's possible he became vulnerable to an opportunistic attack or found himself in a perilous situation he couldn't escape. Unanswered questions continue to haunt this case. How did a man with Wheeler's experience and connections end up discarded in a landfill? Why was his behavior so uncharacteristically erratic in the days leading to his death? Who, or what, was behind the blunt force trauma that ended his life? And perhaps most unsettling, was his death a calculated act, or the tragic result of a chance encounter? Jack Wheeler's murder remains an enigma, a case that underscores how even the most extraordinary lives can end in inexplicable ways. As the years pass and the case remains unsolved, Wheeler's legacy is a poignant juxtaposition to the chilling circumstances of his death. A man who dedicated his life to honoring others is now remembered as the victim of a mystery that may never be unraveled. Frauke Liebs. The quiet streets of Paderborn, Germany, seemed the perfect backdrop for a warm summer evening in June 2006. World Cup fever was in full swing, and Frauke Liebs, a 21-year-old nursing student, joined friends at a local pub to watch the match. By all accounts, it was an ordinary night. Yet what began as a routine outing would soon unravel into one of the most perplexing mysteries in German criminal history. Frauke left the pub around 11 p.m., opting to walk the short distance home. Her friends thought nothing of it. She had done so many times before. Hours later, at 12:49 a.m., her housemate received a text message from Frauke's phone. It read, "I'll be home later. Don't worry." The message offered little cause for alarm at the time, yet its origin, traced to Nieheim, a rural area 35 kilometers away, was an early indication that something was terribly wrong. Frauke never came home that night. In the days that followed, Frauke's loved ones experienced a strange mix of hope and dread. She made 5 phone calls to her housemate and family over the next week. The calls were brief, and Frauke's tone was calm but evasive. She reassured them repeatedly that she would return home soon, but offered no details about her whereabouts or circumstances. Her family's growing unease peaked during the final call on June 27th. When Frauke's sister asked if she was being held against her will, she heard a faint "yes," followed by a louder, more forceful "no." The line went dead. It was the last time anyone would hear Frauke's voice. Months later, on October 4th, 2006, the tragic resolution to Frauke's disappearance came in the form of a grisly discovery. A hunter stumbled upon skeletal remains in a forested area near Lichtenau, about 20 kilometers from Paderborn. Dental records confirmed the worst. The remains belonged to Frauke Liebs. Her belongings, including her mobile phone, handbag, wallet, and wristwatch, were missing. Due to the condition of her remains, forensic experts could not determine the exact cause or time of death, leaving behind more questions than answers. The investigation into Frauke's disappearance and death unearthed several puzzling elements. For one, the varying locations of her phone signals during the week she made contact suggested a deliberate attempt to mislead authorities. Each call was traced to a different industrial area in Paderborn, locations that seemed carefully chosen rather than random. Furthermore, Frauke's calm demeanor during the calls has led many to believe she may have been coerced. Could her captor have been someone she knew, someone whose presence made her suppress fear in favor of compliance? The eerie final call, with its ambiguous yes and no, only deepens the enigma. Speculation about the case has given rise to several theories. One of the most plausible is that Frauke was abducted by someone familiar to her. The trust implied by her calm responses suggests she may not have initially viewed this person as a threat, yet the eventual discovery of her body paints a darker picture, one of betrayal and violence. Another theory posits that the perpetrator's movements and the phone calls were calculated, diversions meant to confuse investigators. By scattering the traces of Frauke's presence across multiple locations, the killer may have sought to buy time or conceal their tracks. The case also raises troubling questions about Frauke's week-long ordeal. Where was she held during the calls? Why did she make no attempts to provide clues about her location or captor? Was she under duress, or had her psychological state been manipulated? The lack of concrete answers has left investigators and the public grasping at shadows. The broader implications of Frauke's case have not been lost on those who continue to seek justice. Her death is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities young women face and the lengths to which predators will go to exploit them. Despite extensive investigations, including interviews, searches, and public appeals, the identity of Frauke's killer remains unknown. To this day, her case serves as both a cautionary tale and a haunting mystery. Its unresolved threads a source of anguish for her family and a challenge to law enforcement. Frauke Lieb's disappearance and death remain an open wound in the fabric of her community. The questions surrounding her final days, and the disturbing mix of hope and despair they contained, cast a long shadow over a case that refuses to fade into obscurity. Until the day her killer is brought to justice, Frauke's story will continue to evoke a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in even the most ordinary of nights. The disappearance of Brandon Lawson. On a humid Texas night in August 2013, Brandon Lawson set out on a drive that would lead him straight into the pages of a modern mystery. He was a devoted father, a hard-working oilfield worker, and a man seemingly tethered to the same struggles and joys as countless others. But in a few short hours, his life would take a turn toward the inexplicable, leaving behind a baffling trail of events that continues to haunt investigators and amateur sleuths alike. It began with an argument. After a long day at work, Brandon returned home to the house he shared with his girlfriend, Ladessa Lofton, and their children in San Angelo, Texas. The tension between them boiled over, and shortly before midnight, Brandon decided to leave. He told Ladessa he was heading to his father's home in Crowley, a journey of roughly 3 hours. In the heat of the moment, it seemed like a decision to cool off, to create space, but what unfolded that night would shatter the normalcy of their lives forever. By 12:30 a.m. on August 9th, Brandon called his brother Kyle to report that his truck had run out of gas on US Route 277 near the small town of Bronte. There was something strange about the call. Brandon claimed he was being chased out of town and referenced the Mexicans in the neighborhood. The words were unsettling, cryptic, and charged with a sense of urgency. Kyle, accustomed to his brother's fiery personality, reassured him he would bring gas and headed out to meet him. Then came the 911 call. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon dialed emergency services. His voice, recorded on the call, carried an unmistakable edge of terror.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing some guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. Got taken to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
He spoke of being in a field, needing the police, and mentioned running out of gas. But the words were fragmented, difficult to parse, as though he were speaking between gulps of air or while moving through the darkness. Some phrases seemed to suggest pursuit. Others hinted at danger lurking just beyond comprehension. The operator's calm responses stood in stark contrast to Brandon's frantic tone. When Kyle arrived at the location of Brandon's truck, a sheriff's deputy had also pulled over to investigate the vehicle, which was parked haphazardly on the road. Brandon wasn't there. Kyle called his brother, and though Brandon answered, he claimed he could see them, but they couldn't see him. It was the last confirmed contact anyone had with him. By sunrise, Brandon Lawson had disappeared into the night, leaving behind his truck, his phone, and a trail of questions that would take years to even partially resolve. For nearly 9 years, Brandon's case became a focal point for amateur detectives and online forums, with theories ranging from accidental misadventure to foul play. Some believed Brandon, under the influence of drugs, may have disoriented himself in the rugged terrain surrounding the highway, succumbing to the elements or an accidental injury. Others pointed to the cryptic nature of his 911 call, interpreting it as evidence of a violent encounter with unknown assailants. The fact that Brandon had an outstanding warrant at the time of his disappearance led some to suggest he may have been hiding from law enforcement, inadvertently placing himself in greater danger. But for all the theories, the case remained frozen in time until February 2022. After years of relentless efforts by family members and search teams, a breakthrough occurred. A search party located clothing near Brandon's last known location, items that were later identified as his. Subsequent investigations by the Texas Rangers uncovered human remains in the same area. The discovery, confirmed through DNA analysis in December 2024, provided long-awaited closure for Brandon's loved ones. Yet, it brought with it a new wave of sorrow. Even with the recovery of his remains, the mystery of Brandon Lawson lingers. The exact cause of death remains undetermined due to the condition of the remains, leaving investigators unable to piece together the final moments of his life. What exactly happened after his 911 call? Who or what was he running from? The garbled and haunting audio from that night continues to fuel speculation, its phrases dissected and debated by those desperate for clarity. Brandon's story is not just one of a young man lost to the Texas night. It's a tale of fractured communication, missed connections, and the thin veil that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. His disappearance reminds us how easily the familiar can become unfathomable, how even the most grounded lives can spiral into the unexplainable in an instant. For Brandon Lawson's family, the truth may forever remain elusive, but their love and determination to find answers have ensured that his story will not fade into obscurity. It is a haunting, incomplete chapter, a modern enigma etched into the annals of unsolved mysteries. Maura Murray. For most, the moment when reality shifts from ordinary to unexplainable is a story best left in the realm of fiction. But in the case of Maura Murray, this shift is both profound and all too real. On February 9, 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student from the University of Massachusetts Amherst disappeared into the shadowed corners of American mystery, leaving behind questions that have defied answers for nearly 2 decades. It began with a chain of decisions that seemed, in hindsight, both calculated and enigmatic. That day, Maura emailed her professors, citing a family emergency that would necessitate her absence from classes, yet no such emergency existed. Shortly after, she withdrew $280 from her bank account, a significant sum for a student, purchased alcohol, and packed her car with personal belongings, including clothes and a bottle of vodka. The evidence suggested intent, but intent for what remained obscure. By evening, Maura was driving through the rural stretches of New Hampshire on Route 112. At approximately 7:30 p.m., her car veered off the road in Haverhill, a seemingly minor accident in a remote location. A local resident called 911 to report the crash, but when police arrived, Maura was gone. Her vehicle remained, engine running, containing her personal items, but no trace of Maura was found at the scene. It was as though she had simply vanished into the night. The timeline of her disappearance, while precise in its documentation, offers little in the way of clarity. Witnesses placed Maura at the crash site for a brief period before she disappeared. A local resident reported seeing her, but there was no indication of where she went. Authorities towed the car and initiated searches, but the absence of evidence, no footprints in the snow, no belongings strewn along possible paths, only deepened the mystery. Professionals tasked with piecing together the case found themselves contending with a series of perplexing clues. The initial investigation suggested that Maura may have been in a state of distress prior to her disappearance. Her fabricated story of a family emergency, the withdrawal of cash, and her choice to travel to New Hampshire all pointed to someone attempting to escape. Yet the crash and her sudden disappearance raised more troubling questions. Was she running from someone or something? Did she meet with foul play after leaving the scene? Or was this the culmination of a personal crisis that ended tragically in the wilderness? Among the many theories that emerged, one suggested Maura's actions were a deliberate attempt to disappear. Supporters of this theory point to her behavior in the days leading up to her disappearance and the steps she took before embarking on her journey. To them, her departure was a carefully planned escape from pressures she could no longer bear, whether academic, personal, or both. Others, however, argue that a more sinister explanation is plausible. Witness accounts of a dark-coloured vehicle near the crash site have fueled speculation that Maura was abducted. Her disappearance, in this context, was not a choice but an act of violence perpetrated by an unknown assailant. The location of her crash, on a quiet and poorly lit stretch of road, could have made her an easy target for someone with malicious intent. Some propose that Maura's disappearance was the result of a tragic accident compounded by her emotional state. Her crash may have left her disoriented, leading her to wander into the surrounding wilderness in search of help. In this scenario, exposure to the harsh winter conditions in New Hampshire could have led to her demise. Yet despite extensive searches, no physical evidence, such as clothing or remains, has been found to support this theory. Unresolved questions linger like spectres over the case. Why did Maura choose that particular destination? What triggered her sudden and secretive departure from campus? Who, if anyone, did she encounter on the road that night? Even the cryptic details of her last day remain a puzzle, as every piece of evidence seems to raise more questions than it answers. Media coverage has both illuminated and complicated the search for Maura Murray. Her disappearance has been chronicled in podcasts, documentaries, and online forums, each offering theories, conjectures, and occasionally questionable conclusions. The podcast Missing Maura Murray and the 2017 documentary The Disappearance of Maura Murray have kept her case in public consciousness, though they have also been criticised for fueling speculation without definitive answers. As of now, Maura's case remains an open wound in the annals of unsolved disappearances. Her family continues to seek answers, and the FBI's involvement underscores the enduring seriousness of the investigation. Yet the truth of what happened to Maura on that cold February night may remain elusive, a story locked in the silence of the New Hampshire woods. The case of Maura Murray lingers in the shadows of what we understand and what we may never know. Every thread seems to unravel, every possibility a reflection of deeper uncertainties. What remains most haunting is not just the void left by her absence, but the sense that her story is a mirror for our own need to make sense of the inexplicable. Matthew Allred, a small boy playing in his backyard, vanishing without a trace. What could be more unsettling? For 2-year-old Matthew Allen Allred, who disappeared in 1974, the discovery of his remains 2 decades later answered one question but left countless others hanging in the air, haunting investigators, his family, and a community that never stopped wondering what really happened. Matthew was last seen on January 27, 1974, playing in the backyard of his family's home. Dressed in jeans, a white shirt, and his favourite brown suede cowboy boots, the toddler was a familiar and beloved presence in his neighbourhood. When he disappeared, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of volunteers joined law enforcement in a massive search effort, combing the streets, wooded areas, and waterways. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no trace of Matthew was found. For nearly 2 decades, his disappearance became a cold case, an aching void in the lives of those who loved him. The case took a shocking turn on December 31st, 1992. During routine maintenance of a septic tank at the home of Reynaldo Pais, a neighbour who had lived across the street from the Allred family at the time of Matthew's disappearance, workers made a grim discovery. Among the skeletal remains unearthed from the tank was a child's cowboy boot. It matched the description of the footwear Matthew had been wearing the day he vanished. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Matthew, providing an answer to the question of his whereabouts, but leaving the circumstances of his death shrouded in mystery. The discovery immediately shifted the focus of the investigation. The septic tank had been sealed with concrete and secured with a heavy lid, making it highly improbable for a small child to access it without assistance. Authorities concluded that Matthew's death was not an accident but a homicide. Yet determining exactly what had happened was a near impossible task. The passage of time had eroded potential evidence, and Reynaldo Pais, the property's owner, had passed away 2 years earlier in 1990. The trail seemed to end before it could begin. Theories about Matthew's fate abound, each as unsettling as the last. One suggests that someone known to the family, perhaps even trusted by them, was responsible. Pies, as the property owner and a neighbour, became a figure of speculation. However, no direct evidence has ever linked him to the crime. Others theorize that Matthew's disappearance was the result of a calculated act by an individual who saw an opportunity and exploited it. In this context, the use of the septic tank as a hiding place becomes a chilling detail, indicative of planning and an attempt to ensure the boy would never be found. Questions surrounding the motive for such an act are as troubling as the crime itself. What could drive someone to harm a defenseless toddler? Was it a crime of opportunity, anger, or something more sinister? The lack of answers has left a gaping hole in the narrative, one that no amount of theorizing can fill. What makes Matthew's case particularly haunting is the juxtaposition of its apparent resolution and the enduring mysteries it leaves behind. His family was granted the painful knowledge of his fate, yet the absence of clarity about how and why he died continues to gnaw at the edges of closure. Unlike cases where the lack of a body fuels hope, the recovery of Matthew's remains brought with it a different kind of anguish, one steeped in unanswered questions. Decades later, the case of Matthew Allen Allred remains a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can reside even in the most unsuspecting corners of our communities. His story forces us to confront the discomforting reality that not all mysteries come with answers, and not all crimes lead to justice. As his family and those who remember him continue to seek the truth, Matthew's legacy endures as a symbol of innocence lost and the relentless pursuit of understanding in the face of the unknown. The image of a small boy playing in his backyard, unaware of the fate that awaited him, lingers as a haunting reflection of both the vulnerability of childhood and the unanswered questions that keep us searching, even when the answers seem just out of reach.